Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzil Douglas, Premier Honorable Vance Amry, Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Curtis Martin, I should say Curtis Alden Martin, Governor of ECCB, Sir Dwight Venner, Financial Secretary Hilary Hazel, other members of Parliament and other members of the other government officials, His Excellency Miguel Sau, Ambassador to the Republic of China and Taiwan, Vice President of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mr. Damian Hobson, members of the Board of Directors of the Chamber, other Chamber members, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The St. Kitts-Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce is indeed pleased to be a part of this year's consultation on the economy, which is being held under the theme, The Green Economy, a Pathway Towards a Sustainable Future. Under this theme, we note that the green economy is seen as a critical success factor to the future prosperity of our Twin Island Federation. But notwithstanding the importance of the green economy, we would be negligent in our deliberations if other areas of economic concern were not addressed at this forum. The Chamber is encouraged by the strides that have been made to date with regards to the green energy development in the Federation, but there is a long way to go. We commend government on the official approval of the National Energy Policy and congratulate the Minister of Energy, Deputy Prime Minister Honorable Earl Martin, for posting this policy online. The Chamber calls on other government ministers and ministries to follow this lead and publish all government policies that affect the public and business. Through consultation with the Chamber, government has dedicated a list of low-energy devices and alternative energy equipment for duty and customs service charge exemption. We applaud this as a step in the right direction. Through cooperation with our Taiwanese friends, we have seen solar panels installed on government headquarters and the ICT Center, and most recently, a 1 megawatt solar farm commissioned at RLB International. We know that solar energy has lit the roadway between Newton Ground and St. Paul's and will be one of the primary sources of power at the new tourism farm that is being developed at Newton Ground in St. Kitts. The Chamber would like to applaud government on these initiatives and to publicly thank our friends, Ambassador Miguel Sau, and the government and people of Taiwan for their continued assistance to our country in this regard. We are also heartened that government has been addressing long-term costs through its alternative energy project and are grateful that duty concessions have made it possible for businesses to pursue alternative energy projects of their own. In this regard, I would like to single out SL Hosford and the Company Limited and TDC for their pioneering investments in green technology. The Chamber recommends that government now looks after the welfare of residential consumers and suggests that VAT be removed from alternative energy devices purchased for residential use. This would act as a stimulus for the householder to participate in the green economy we wish to create and would reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. Consumers in Nevis have for the past 2 years aired their concerns over not seeing any reduction in their electricity bills since the installation of the wind turbines on that island. Given that the peak load capacity on Nevis is 11 megawatts, 40% of which is now wind generated, it is not unreasonable for consumers to expect this to be reflected in a reduction of their fuel surcharge, as we would imagine less fuel should now be used. Clearly, there needs to be more transparency and accountability regarding energy charges in both Kitts-Nevis and St. Kitts. The Chamber has been advised by consultant engineers that geothermal energy represents a source of reliable base load generation. We are therefore concerned that the head start which we had over our CARICOM neighbors in the development of geothermal energy is slipping because of litigation. In the meantime, our regional counterparts are vigorously pursuing their geothermal goals. For example, the French overseas territories in the Caribbean are actively pursuing geothermal projects. Our government needs to bring the geothermal stakeholders on Nevis together for the good of the entire Federation. If this is not done soonest, the possibility exists that our two islands would sooner be fed by undersea cables from Guadeloupe than from our own geothermal source in Nevis. I trust that I have said enough in my opening to demonstrate that the Chamber subscribes to the view that the green economy is indeed a pathway to success for St. Kitts and Nevis, while underscoring that there must be an enabling environment for green development, fostered by full commitment from all stakeholders if the benefits of the green economy are to be realized and maximized for the good of all. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I indicated earlier that there are other areas of economic concern that need to be addressed. And while time might not permit us to cover all of these matters at this forum, the Chamber hopes that by restating some of them here, we would restart the conversation on these critical areas with the relevant government ministries and stakeholder groups. One such matter is that of the motion of no confidence. Last December, in addressing the Chamber's Christmas luncheon, the Prime Minister said that the recently filed motion of no confidence should be dealt with expeditiously. At the end of January of this year, the Chamber called on him to ensure that the motion be brought before the National Assembly without further delay. The Chamber remains alarmed that this matter continues to drag on to the detriment of the economy, the investment climate, and the good name of our country. We repeat our call for the matter to be disposed of without any further delay. I would now like to turn my attention to the areas of manufacturing, small business, and tourism. Manufacturing. Energy cost is priority number one for all manufacturers. If St. Kitts and Nevis are going to remain competitive, the cost of energy for this vital sector needs to be reduced considerably. Over the last 3 years, the cost of energy to manufacturers has increased by 47%. Most of the manufacturing companies have had consultants audit their facilities to identify and target areas for electricity reduction. The manufacturing division, under the chairmanship of Jose Rosa, has taken the initiative to present proposals to various international funding agencies, such as the Center for Development of Enterprise, to help in identifying opportunities to reduce energy cost. It is going to be vital for our indigenous manufacturers and enclave sector that government continues to work with them to explore ways to reduce their energy bill. One idea calls for government to fund the technical support needed to implement the improvements identified during energy audits. Also, the government can develop an energy credit program based on increases in production, headcount, or any other relevant economic indicator that positively impacts our Federation's economy. The partial scope agreement, PSA, with Brazil is at a critical juncture. The economic, manufacturing, and assembly plants are gearing up to increase exports to Brazil under the PSA. This could result in additional products and increased employment in the sector, averaging over 100 employees per year for the next 4 years. Given this potential uplift that this could have on our labor market, I would think we would all agree that the ratification and implementation of the PSA by all of the countries involved must be treated with urgency. Our government must play the leadership role and do whatever it takes to bring this 7-year journey to completion by the end of 2013. Specifically, we need to engage the government of Brazil to ratify the agreement, finalize the discussion on the list of products to be exported by St. Kitts-Nevis, and complete the implementation. The National Manufacturing Strategy. Local manufacturers and government have produced a draft National Manufacturing Strategy document, which was the primary output of the National Manufacturing Strategy Forum held in May of this year. A task force of private sector and government officials have continued to work on the final revision, which will be ready by the end of November 2013. The Chamber looks forward to the adoption of this document by government early in the new year. Industrial sites and industrial buildings. The lack of industrial space on the Paul Southwell industrial site has been raised by the Chamber and needs to be addressed. This, of course, limits the possibility of expansion for many of the existing companies located there and creates a barrier to entry for new manufacturers. The Chamber calls on government to fast-track the opening of new industrial parks to attract new manufacturing companies. I will now look at small business. The Chamber wishes to congratulate government for making venture capital available to the microsector in St. Kitts and Nevis. We feel, however, that some of this microsector lending could be channeled through the Foundation for National Development, as this institution already has a suitable facility with a track record of high success among microsector entrepreneurs. An incubator building for small business development is very necessary. This facility would enable small manufacturers to share overheads and reduce startup costs. Some possible locations include the Kitts-Nevis buildings, the Factory Social Center, the W.B. Hutchison building, or perhaps the former Fort Thomas Hotel. Here, startup businesses would receive assistance for 12 to 24 months, after which they would be weaned to make space for new entrepreneurs. The government of Mexico has excellent programs in this area, and we suggest that they be tapped for technical assistance. And finally, I will treat with tourism. The hotel and tourism sector has received notable government assistance that has been vital to the sustainability of many local tourism businesses through exceptionally difficult times. These include the SIDF EC $8 million soft loan facility for refurbishment, the provision of duty-free incentives on food and some beverages, fixtures, furniture, appliances, and materials, a reduced VAT rate of 10%, and support for initiatives to improve occupancy through improved airlift. These, we believe, contributed to the 5% increase in stayover visitors recorded during the first half of 2012. But as we gear up for another tourist season, our tourism partners could do with some more help in these following areas. Number one on their list is the cost of electricity, which is the main driver of operating costs for many tourism businesses. The energy bill has increased significantly on account of VAT and fuel surcharge. Any easement in these areas would be welcomed. The cost of travel to the Federation has steadily increased in recent years due to increases in taxes such as VAT, room tax, departure tax, and airline surcharge. A reduction in any of these line items could stimulate stay-over travel. Finding funding to refurbish properties during the off-season from operating income still presents significant challenges. This would be less strenuous if hoteliers were allowed to carry forward excess credits to the next tax period. The suggested service charge split of 90-10 is not feasible for many properties without them incurring additional costs. This, we believe, needs to be revised. We also believe that we need to revive the Bastille Beautiful Committee as a joint public-private sector organization. The Chamber and the HTA are concerned that the charm of historic Bastille might be lost if preservation efforts are not stepped up. And finally, the Chamber recommends that the National Park at Ponds Needs must be developed as a recreational park for the people of St. Kitts-Nevis and visitors alike. With Warner Park virtually off limits to public access, we need a recreational area with picnic and campgrounds and jogging and biking trails. Let us now turn to the state of the economy. The Chamber has examined the St. Kitts-Nevis central government accounts for the period July 1, 2012 to June 30, 2013, as published by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. These accounts show that the government realized an overall surplus of EC $274 million, which included grants received of just over $1 million and non-tax income of $340 million. If grants and non-tax income were removed from this equation, we would have realized a deficit of $126 million. Clearly, government should not be lulled into a false sense of security because of the reported surplus. Rather, spending on short-term stimulus activities needs to be carefully managed, and some funding must be put into more long-term projects which would give sustained impetus to economic activity. And on a related note, the Chamber contends that there is still inadequate transparency on the use of these excess funds and insufficient accountability on the disbursements from the SIDF. While the SIDF is not a statutory board, the proceeds from the sale of public assets are a matter of public interest. The Chamber, like the IMF, is concerned about government spending, which amounted to $534 million for the period under review. This was the third highest in the OECS, even though we have the smallest population. On a per capita basis, personal emoluments were twice those of some other OECS countries, as was spending on goods and services. Fiscal prudence would dictate that government needs to give priority to expenditure control and public sector reform. It is our understanding that a review of public sector expenditure was commissioned some time ago. The Chamber is of the view that the recommendations from that review should be published and implemented. The Chamber has looked at the amounts collected from VAT since its inception and has observed that the takings have consistently exceeded forecasts. Given this overachievement, the Chamber recommends that a greater number of basic necessities be included in the basket of zero-rated goods. These should include food staples and high-volume pharmaceutical consumables. In the area of corporate tax, the Chamber calls on government to convene a forum with the private sector to discuss various incentives which would stimulate economic activity and result in a win-win situation for both government and business. One suggestion calls for the reduction in VAT on financial services to reduce the cost of borrowing and to incentivize banks to drop lending rates. The Chamber also wishes to repeat our call for further reduction in in corporation tax, removal of restrictions on capital allowances, implementation of accelerated depreciation, removal of restrictions on losses carried forward, removal of restrictions on bad debt, passage of legislation to address restrictions on donations, and removal of restrictions on write-offs for employees earning in excess of $75,000 per annum. This would enable companies to attract premium talent at competitive rates. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I trust that my presentation was clearly indicative of the Chamber's firm belief in and support for the green economy and its importance as a pathway to a sustainable future. However, I also trust that I made it clear that several other areas of economic endeavor are just as important and must be given equal priority if we are to maximize our developmental efforts. I wish to close with a statement from the green community that I found very instructive. I quote, "Even though there is very little sunshine in Germany, that country dominates the planet by far in percentage of solar installation, simply because government policy shines on solar panels in Germany. In Mexico, on the other hand, very little investment occurs in solar panels despite the abundance of sunshine, simply because government policy does not shine on solar panels in Mexico." End of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, let us be guided accordingly during our deliberations. Thank you very much for your attention.